And Charlie was so influential in designing and visioning the exhibit gallery here, which is why we have, I think, one of the more unique exhibit galleries for a local history museum, because you see that imprint of Charlie Beck throughout our gallery. He felt that exhibits should tell a story unto themselves. You don't need a lot of words, you don't need a lot of labeling. And of course, as museum people, we like labels, even though 85% of the people don't read them, but that's okay, we read it. So, Charlie Becks, we're here tonight because we have a 1956 mural that Charlie was commissioned by Pennington County at Thief River Falls, and we're going to hear a lot more about that tonight. What I'm going to tell you is I feel it's in the best place. And it's a unique piece because it allows us as a historical society to showcase our mission, which has changed, it's evolved greatly, but it basically has remained unchanged since 1927, and that is to collect, preserve, and interpret the history and heritage of Otter County. And I feel that this mural is a great addition to that collection. It's allowed us to collect such an important piece of Otter County history, and also to rework our whole front area. Some of you maybe have not been in here for a while, but that gave us the impetus to finally make those changes that we wanted to make. So not only look at the mural, but please do us read a few of the labels, because we worked really hard on that. That's fine. So before I hand it off, I just want to give special thanks to the Beck Mural Committee that was formed. Carolyn Glesne, of course, Charlie's daughter, Brook Barsness, Chuck Christianson, Mark Sundberg, Steve Nelson, Jess Henrickson. Then, of course, I want to thank people who have worked so hard on making this happen. The Midwest Art Conservation Center, and who did the restoration work, and Art Serve, who did the framing. Although I feel kind of odd thanking them because they weren't cheap. So if you donated to this project, a lot of that money went to the restoration of the mural and the framing, and man, it's a highlight. And then, I also want to thank Dan Stonayan and from Underwood Woodworking for just making it all come together, the wall and the railing. So thank you, Dan, and Al Thompson for lending a hand for that. But I especially want to thank my staff, Leah Newleib, who did all the graphics that you see on the exhibit, is Leanne's handiwork, and then of course Kathy Evavold, my curator of collections, and without Kathy, none of this would have happened. So they definitely deserve, I think, a little round of applause. But there are two young men that were kind of instigators in getting this project going. One was my old Cadets Hotel Preservation Association friend, Mark Sundberg, but I never had met Steve Nelson before, and through this project I got to know Steve, and it's been an honor. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot, how could I forget Kurt Mortenson, County Commissioner Mortenson, my God. How long did we store this mural in your shop?
1
Weeks.
year.
It could be longer.
So thank you, Kurt, for allowing that to happen. So, yes. We still haven't gotten a bill from the county, so. Steve Nelson, I'd like to introduce Steve Nelson now, and he's going to talk about discovering the Charlie Beck mural.
Man, is it an honor to be here tonight. I have been looking forward to this for a long time. And as you look around the room and you see Chris and you see those names mentioned earlier, Mark Sundberg, Brook Barsness, Carolyn Glesne, Chuck Christianson, Amy Sharp, and others, I would be asking, who in the world is this guy talking to us about a Charles Beck mural? Well, the answer is I really don't have any business being up here. But that's what makes this story of the Beck mural a good one. The mural's journey from rescue to reveal is truly one involving a set of unlikely, fortuitous events that in the end worked out like clockwork with the help of all those I mentioned, many of you, and others. So thank you all for being here tonight. As Chris mentioned, my name is Steve Nelson. I live in South Minneapolis and have since 1988. But I was born in Fergus. Graduated from high school in '83, the community college in '85, and then moved on to Hamline University in St. Paul. I married a Fergus girl, Tammy, one of the Roger and Val Jean Keller girls that you've heard so much about. And some of you may remember my parents, Terry and Linnea Nelson. My dad owned a music store in downtown Main Street in the 60s and the 70s. And my mom, well, she's just wonderful. And I am glad to have her and my wife here making the trip up from the cities today. And although I've been away for a long time, I return to Fergus frequently to see family and friends, and simply because I love it up here. My ever-increasing appreciation for the work of Charles Beck has been a constant since I was young, and that led me to start reading this book, Charles Beck, Nature of an Artist. I hope everyone is familiar with it. I started reading it in mid-22, and I have to mention that I am not a reader, seriously, and I never have been. My dad was an avid reader, my mom is, my brother is, but it just hasn't worked out for me. So the mere fact that I chose to read this book in 2022 is significant to this story and has everything to do with my appreciation for Charles Beck. The book was written by Amy Sharp, who lives in and has an art gallery near Aitkin, Minnesota. And Amy, thanks for being here tonight. There's a chapter titled Working Large in the book that describes a period of time in the late 50s when a Fargo architect firm commissioned Beck to create murals for their public buildings. And he did one for the Stevens County Courthouse in Morris. He did one for the Cavalier County Courthouse in Langdon, North Dakota, up on the Canadian border. He did murals in several schools in the area. And then he did the one in the Pennington Courthouse in Thief River Falls in 1956. And according to the book, Beck himself said, "The one in Thief River Falls is still the best, and the one I'm most proud of. And, by the way, that's the one we got." I didn't mention that I have worked with counties in Minnesota my entire career. And upon learning of the Pennington mural, I called my contact up in the county, the coordinator, a guy named Kevin Henrickson, who I didn't know at the time. I called him in September 23rd of 2022. And I just wanted to ask, after reading this book, if the mural was still around, if it was accessible to the public, and if I could plan a trip up to come and see it. I didn't know these things existed. And he shared that it is available to see, but he suggested that I do it soon, as the future was uncertain because the county board was talking about a remodel to that building. So I did what any smart guy would do. I called my friend Mark Sundberg. And with that, I'd like to invite Mark up.
Yeah, so, I'm going to kind of walk you through the process a little bit of how we got to this point and how, you can watch the video and see the whole process, but it kind of all started back in 2022. You heard Steve read the book and he called me. But some of us guys our age now are finding ourselves kind of in that empty nester or close to it stage, so we're finding ourselves with a little more time. So some of us had kind of been taking these little adventures and doing things. We did one of the ones we did before this one. It was kind of the Otter Tail Dam tour, And we toured the Pisgah Dam, Central Dam, Dayton Hollow, Freiburg, one other one, Broken Down, all that. So this was actually Steve's idea. He said he came up to me that fall and he said, you know, I think we should go look at all of the existing Charlie Beck murals. I said, what a great idea. So he did a lot of research and found out that there were probably about 3 that we could go look at. It was the one in Pennington County, there's one in Langdon, North Dakota, and then there's the one at the college here. So.
And that was the one that was in the Stevens County Courthouse.
That was in the Stevens, exactly.
The colleges.
The one at the college, yes, that was actually moved up here by Charlie himself. So, we had this great idea. Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to go look at all 3 of those in a day, right? So that was the plan. And we invited our good friend Bruce Gerritsen, who's here. He was to join us, but at the last minute got called away, so he couldn't join us. So we set off, and it was noon, and we just had arrived at Thief River Falls, the first stop. So clearly, we weren't going to make it to Langdon and then back to Falls. But it was fortunate because at that point we had realized that we had sort of gotten, we realized that we had found, we got into a situation here with we did not expect to someday be doing all this work, but the 3rd floor we walked in, I don't know, it was really kind of a neat experience to see the mural on the wall when you walked up. The whole 3rd floor of that building was abandoned at that point, but the mural, it was still very impressive. Even though they had tables and boxes and all this stuff in front of it, we had to move all that so we could get a good look at it. So we looked it over, and then on the way out, we thought, well, we're going to stop in and talk to the coordinator. And basically, he gave us the plan again. And he said, you know, we're going to redo this, and we said, you know, we were certain to say that, you know, if you could possibly reuse it where it is, that would be the best thing for the mural and for everything. So, but he said, no, it's probably not likely. And then we left, and we said, well, look, we know there's probably interest in Fergus Falls. If you're going to get rid of this thing, if you're going to take it, you know, if you're going to destroy it, don't call us. So that's what they did, and you were the last one that you made the conversation. You talked to the coordinator about that. How did that go?
Well, the visit that we had up there was October 14th, I think. Again, this is 2022. And, you know, when we walked out of that building, we thought everything was cool. There, you know, it wasn't a dire situation or anything like that. We were just blown away at the beauty of that mural and really enjoyed the experience. So I was a bit surprised when 3 weeks later, I remember I was sitting in my desk at my office, and it was a Friday at about 5 o'clock. Yep, still working at 5. Hear that, Commissioner Mortenson? And it was the coordinator, and he told me that earlier that week, the county board, Pennington County Board, had made a decision that they did not want to keep the mural, it wasn't in their plans, and that they have donated it to those preservationists from the Twin Cities and other places for display in Fergus Falls. But it would have to be removed from the courthouse by December 31st. And that call came in November 10th. So I just hope you can appreciate that situation of what? You're up in Thief River Falls, and we don't know what it's going to take to get that mural off. If it can be removed, how is it affixed to the wall? So I did what any smart guy would do, and I called my friend Mark Sundberg. And seriously, this would take a group of very committed people in Fergus Falls in this area. to tackle it, and that's exactly what happened.
And unfortunately, I when he called, or right around that time he called, I had stopped out at the museum to talk to Chris about something, and on the way out, I ran into Brook Barsness, and Brook said to me, "What's this about a mural? What do you know about this mural, this Beck mural?" And I said, "Well," I think we talked about it, and I said, and we both agreed we need to form a committee, and we did form a committee, Chris mentioned the committee members earlier, so we kicked into gear pretty quickly, and we didn't know what we were getting into. I mean, we were thinking, you know, this thing, how are we going to even get this thing off the wall? How is it even fastened to the wall? It's could cause, we accepted it, but then we realized this could be $100,000 to get this thing off the wall. You know, we don't know what. So, fortunately, Steve, who he's given me a lot of credit, which is not right. The credit is due right here. I'm telling you, this whole thing was conceived and organized, especially behind the scene, by Steve Nelson. He had the contacts. He contacted MAC, or Midwest Arts Conservation Center in Minneapolis, and they basically wrote the roadmap. And then Chuck Christianson, who understands the process a lot better than Steve and I, he understood all of what they were telling us, and Chuck and I ran to Fargo, got this huge tube that you see on the video, and from there we came up with a plan. And then Carolyn, do you want to tell about getting MAC involved and about how that day went?
Yeah, Steve made these great contacts with MAC, and this was toward the early December, I think. And so then I was back and forth on the phone with Rita, one of their staff people who would do some of the restoration, back and forth, because she wanted to learn more about this mural and see if it was really worthy of their time. I almost felt like I was courting them. Because she said, well, right now we're working on the stained glass for the Glesne mansion. And I thought, I don't know where Dad's mural's gonna fall in that part. But we finally decided that they would come up to Thief River Falls on Tuesday, December 20th. Deadline, December 31st, keep that in mind. And they went up, that was a Tuesday. Chuck and I were gonna drive up early Tuesday morning and meet them there and kind of advocate for them taking on the job. And they drove up Monday night in a raging blizzard. These two city girls who'd never been out in the country, it was total whiteout for 3 hours for them. She called me Monday night, and I could tell in her voice that she wasn't real happy. And she said, it's terrible up here. She said, we're just gonna get up in the morning, we're gonna take a look at the mural and get out of here. And I was just devastated. I thought, no, you can't do that. I was afraid the weather would just kind of preoccupy them so much they'd look at it and say, nah, I don't think we want to monkey with this. And then when we got up on Tuesday morning, there was no way Chuck and I could get up there to fight for it because the weather was so bad here. So I kind of felt pretty hopeless. But at 8:15 that morning, I get a call from Rita. And she said, we're at the courthouse, we're looking at the mural, and we think we can get it off the wall. And I had to sit down. And she said, but I need your permission to take it off. I said, absolutely, please go ahead. And not having any idea, what they were gonna get themselves into. But 2 hours later, she called. And she said, the mural's off the wall. It's on the floor in a classroom where it will be locked up until you come to get it. So not only did the mural get off the wall, but they accepted the job that they would do the restoration. So then the rescue began.
And then the next step, Chuck Christianson, his wife Ramona Jacobs, and Gary Henrickson and I, we all went up, that was on the 20th of December, and on the 28th, we went up there, and...
that's what's on the video.
Yeah, that's where, so there it is, there, Yeah, there it is. Look at that, what perfect timing, right? Okay. So that's the big tube that we rolled it up on. And then there was the special paper that had to go over the face of it, so we rolled it all up, loaded it in, and that actually was really slick, it went really well. And then we ended up out at Kurt's place, and very generously let us store it there for a year.
What's
And
the
then-
iron there? They're
What's that?
rolling it up and there's an iron.
Okay, so Chuck, do you want to tell that? That was just a,
Yeah, it's a conservation material called Viva 371. It's a double-faced adhesive that it melts at 150 degrees, and I use that to adhere it to the sonotube. Unfortunately, we got it on there very, very square because it rolled up very nice. The fabric is called Hollytex. It's a polyspun polyester it provides some cushion when you're rolling it, so it won't adhere to each other, and sometimes there's little missing pieces of paint, it would help consolidate those. So and I got information about the Hollytex from Rita at Midwest Arts Conservation. The sonotube, when we brought it down there, I don't think she's ever seen a sonotube so big. And they got no place to store it, so I don't know what they did with it, but I figured the bigger the better, and fortunately I measured the dimensions of the door, so we were able to get it out of there. We bought a pipe, and then we bought plywood, so we actually Mark did a great job making the plywood on the ends, both ends with a hole, and then so we were able to roll it. It worked out really well, and we could fasten it to the sawhorses on the way home. So
Yeah.
it really worked well. It didn't really even take that long.
it was a challenge getting it down the stairs.
Yeah. Not so much for me, because I have to pick the thing up from the bottom.
Well, the thing was this big around, you couldn't get your hands all around it, there's nothing to hold on
Yeah,
to, so.
the interesting thing about this video now, when the audio is on, my wife is up watching, and she goes, "Chuck, you're scratching the floor."
Chuck, we weren't gonna say that.
I always thought
He insures that building.
I always thought she could have thrown her shoe down and put the end of that in there, but we never got in trouble for that.
All right, so yeah, we got it off, yeah.
Curiosity from an old man. How did they get it off of the wall if it was glued on? Chuck, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's a Chuck question,
So
yeah.
we weren't prepared to do it properly. I mean, to have it, really they should have had a sonotube, and, so there was some damage that happened that shouldn't have happened, but basically they just used it's like an art spatula. So it's a rounded, flexible blade, and they're just scraping it along the wall. And they got it done in 2 hours. But I checked it, and I thought I was gonna, I was trying to figure out how to do it because I thought I was going to have to do it, and I thought, in retrospect, it wouldn't have been that hard, but I thought it was going to be a major process.
Yeah.
So they ended up doing it, and it's great, looks great, but yeah, it was something that happened very quickly.
Yeah, so Brooke. You, all right, Brooke we call it Brooke, of course.
I was told to thank donors and be brief. One of the first questions I was asked along the way was, how do you feel about this? And what would Charlie think about all of this? And I have to tell you that I've felt his presence with us through this whole thing. So my first thanks go to the Beck family, and especially to Joyce and Charlie, who have been with us through the whole process. We thank you for your encouragement as the mural story unfolded. I also want to thank the Otter County Historical Society Board of Directors for accepting and stewarding the mural. We estimated that the cost for the restoration, the framing, and the installation would be $32,500. We talked about funding fundraising. We talked about a GoFundMe page. We talked about grant writing. We talked about this, we talked about that. Nothing really fit with the big source deadlines. And we decided that if we raised more than the $32,500, anything above and beyond could be used for interpretation and continued preservation of the mural. In October 2023, as you've heard, the mural was delivered to Minneapolis for restoration. Meanwhile, Paul Nelson, Rebecca Peterson, Chris Schulke, and Rudd Wasson met with me a couple of times. We mobilized, and it went fast. You should have a clipboard. Okay, this was the beginning of October 2023. By the end of October 2023, we had commitments of the full $32,500. So thank you to Paul, Rebecca, Chris, and Rudd for telling the story. Those who heard the mural story told others. Sunrise Rotary invited us to give programs. Once, when it was a Christmas story of the miracle of the mural rescue. Rudd told the mural story to his rodeo group, retired old doctors. When contacted, several donors were leaving on trips and mailed checks on their way to the airport. A daughter asked her dad, they matched each other's gifts. A grandson asked his grandmother to match his gift. She did. Almost all the gifts came from individuals within our community. Thank you to all who contributed to the mural fund. Now, more than $40,000. Together, we got the job done, and we couldn't have done this without you.
All right, thanks, Brooke. Yeah, that was really, really great. So the next step, you know, it sits in Kurt's building for a year, and then now we gotta move it again. So back into my trailer, and Chuck and I went down to Minneapolis. We hooked up with Steve, and then we got it delivered to the, I don't know if it's
Here it
coming
is,
up.
right?
There it is. Wow, what perfect timing. Yeah, actually that's coming back in again. But anyway, yeah, you want to talk a little bit, tell them a little bit about Mac and about the people there, maybe.
Sure. At the risk of being just a little bit boring, I hope it's not. I just want to, I find it really amazing how this project intersects with my work, and because I really want to give a call out to one of my coworkers who 10 years ago walked into my office and said, "That's a Beck." And he was born and raised and lives in Stillwater, 4th generation Stillwater guy. And what was hanging on my wall was my 50th birthday present from my wife, and it was Blue Farm by Charles Beck, number 50 of 100. And I learned in that conversation that, his name is Kevin, growing up in Stillwater, he became aware of Charles Beck because there was a sizable collection donated to the public library in Stillwater. And as a kid, he'd go in there, and it caught his eye, and he became a fan. He became a collector. He's got a lot of Beck pieces that he's collected over the years. So we've just had these really cool conversations and this common interest. And so when this project arose and we were faced with, what are we going to do? How are we going to approach removing that mural? I let Kevin know what the situation was, and I said, if you've got any ideas, let me know. And just on Monday, he and I were in the office about 6 o'clock. Hear that, Commissioner Mortenson? In the office at 6 o'clock. And I said, Kevin, can you remind me how you came to recommend Mac for this project? And he shared with me that he had a contact that used to work for the Minnesota Historical Society, and she left quite a while ago, but she remains active in the arts area, but also in the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts organizations, and so is Kevin. And he sent me an email that he wrote her back in November of 2022. And it just blew me away. I read this on Monday night, and I didn't realize he had done it. But he wrote the equivalent of a page and a half of this whole scenario, this whole situation, and how important Beck is, and how important it is for Fergus Falls to get this, and would you have any recommendations on how to approach it? And the response from this individual was, I think this is a job for MAC. And so, as this committee was being formed and organized, I shared that information, and it ended up being the best piece of advice I think we could have received. Google MAC, Midwest Art Conservation Center. They are one of 5 of these types of organizations in the nation, and they are incredible. They work on, as I think Carolyn mentioned, the Glesne mentioned stained glass, but you can go into the next room and they're working on a Van Gogh. Seriously, they're working on stuff from all over the world, and to be connected with them was just huge for this project. So I wanted to share that connection with work. And the other one is with Commissioner Mortenson. I work for an organization that handles insurance for most counties in the state. And we have a board of directors made up of county commissioners across the state. And Commissioner Mortenson, who I did not know, expressed interest in being on our board. When? In December of 2022. So I'm talking to this gentleman about the process of the board election, and ultimately I met him probably December 8th down in Minneapolis, where we had our annual meeting, and he was elected to our board. And Otter County should be very pleased to have that representation on the Minnesota County Intergovernmental Trust Board. And you'll see here someplace, as I did, a picture came through once the mural was retrieved from Pennington and brought to Commissioner Mortenson's storage facility, a picture of him. And I see this 2 weeks after I met him, and I'm going, is this Commissioner Mortenson? And that was the message I sent to the work crew. Is that Commissioner Mortenson? And sure enough, what a bizarre turn of events that it is him that offered to store this thing in his garage.
One other aspect, if you see back here, these sketches, they're really neat. Carolyn uncovered these, and Chuck did some work on this. Chuck, do you want to come up and talk a little bit about the sketches?
Yeah. Story about, Kurt and getting the mural in his shop. So Kurt happens to be my brother-in-law. So I knew he had this pristine shop, and I thought, oh, this is the perfect spot for this. So we went through all the drawings, all the sketches that he had saved. And there was a lot of stuff that didn't look like Beck, which I thought was pretty cool, because I like it all. I like drawing, I like it all. So anyway, these were on a shelf in a studio, and they had been up there for close to 70 years. 10 years prior to Charlie's passing, Charlie had shown these to Carolyn, so she knew they were there. So when I was helping go through stuff in the studio, in the house, she found these, and these were curled up, they were torn, there's pictures on the screen of some of them. So they're dusty, they're torn up, they're in tough shape. And Carolyn was looking at these and going, yeah, I think we should just throw these. So Carolyn, we can't throw these. Let me see what I can do. So I took there was a number of things. There were some sketches that he did as a student up at Concordia, and I said, well, I'll see what I can do with one of these little ones. I used the same product that they use on the big painting. It's called Viva 371 film. I used a thinner version of that to actually adhere these drawings to some Japanese rice paper, where I was able to bring the tears together. I used the iron to get rid of the wrinkles. There's some areas this part was missing, so I actually used some of Charlie's pastels to fix that corner. And the thing about art restoration, you always want to make everything reversible. So if you put a that on a, put an iron on that, 150 degrees, that would melt and that would disappear. And same with the work I did adhering it to the rice paper. So everything could go back to original. And that's the idea of restoration. So there was 7 sketches on 6 pieces of paper. That little drawing was on the top of this paper here. And I thought, well, these 4 look so good together. I thought, well, I'm going to cut that one out to have it. So I took the liberty to do that. So the interesting thing, this is a sketch that is closest to the mural. And that's basically just kind of a copy of that. And what he's done there, he's made a grid so he can transfer the image to the canvas. So that's what's interesting about that. There's a couple other things I want to take note. On the bottom of this one, and you can see it on that sketch over there, Charlie let Carl, his son Carl, who was probably around 5 at that time, sign his name. Carl Beck. So I can just vision, Charlie having Carl on his back while he's making these and signing Carl, So yeah, it was. The cool thing about this is, in the 1956 he did a lot of murals for Foss & Foss Architects up in Fargo. He did a lot of great painting, so it was a really good year for Charlie. And it's great having, this part of the collection. So yeah, I appreciate it.
I think we'll wrap up with some thank yous. Okay, very good. First I want to thank Pennington County. I think it was a generous move on their part. And being a county guy, I think that connection between Otter County and Pennington County is really special. So when you're up there in Thief River Falls, drop in and say thank you. Again, I'd like to thank Commissioner Mortenson for his generosity in storing the mural. Mac, we've referred to them several times, and Rita in particular. She just was the person that took this project from taking it off the wall to getting it on the truck to the framer. So she did just beautiful work. And as I've said, when I was here for the day that it was delivered and hung on the wall, it was extremely rewarding just to have it here. But then equally as rewarding to see it look as beautiful as it is, and that's the work of Rita. And then also to ArtServe. That's the framer that we worked with, and again, just a terrific team of people that have a passion for working with art. They're in Northeast Minneapolis, and they traveled to Mac to pick up the frame when it was on a stretch frame, and they took it to their shop and they built that large maple, right? Birch or maple? Maple frame in their shop. Notice the detailing in the corners. And they're also the team that delivered it here. And
it's right on the
Is it right here?
It's
So again, ArtServe, and they do all kinds of work. They do storage, they do crate building for shipping, and specialize in framing as well.
All right, just a couple more. This video itself, I'd like to thank Brittany Smith. I think she's back there. She did a wonderful job on that. Maybe we can get this to roll on Tag Access or something. That's that going. And Candace Stock, who did the food. And least, but not a lot of food. So help yourselves. There's lots of great food back there. And least but not least, last but not least. All right. I would like you all to give a huge round of applause to the one person I believe that made this that started the ball rolling and did most of the scene work behind the scene, and that's Steve Nelson. Oh.
Me and a live mic, I'm telling you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, and thank you everybody here. And I've heard that many times. I was just kind of doing some air traffic control down in the cities and just watching with great admiration the work that was being done here. But let's not forget, it was that book that was written. And so credits to Amy Sharp for writing that book. If that wasn't done, I don't know that this project would take place. And finally, I just have to take this opportunity to thank my mom for raising me in an environment that appreciates music, that appreciates art. This project has been so rewarding on many levels, which would not have been possible without a foundational appreciation for all the little things and the big things that happened in the past nearly 3 years. And you were right. I discovered and admit that reading will open up new worlds. Clearly, I will need to be very selective going forward. Thanks, Mom.
All right, so that concludes the official proceedings. We're here for a bit until at least 7. So take a look at the mural, grab some food, grab some water, and then tour the museum until I come and get you and say, out. So, thank you all for coming.